Hello, this is Max. This is a story about a girl who had to meet with older men to earn money, which led to the destruction of her relationship with her boyfriend. You can subscribe to the channel after watching. It helps us a lot in realizing the content. Laura, a foreign languages student, faints during class and seeks help from social services. She expresses her inability to afford cafeteria meals and is advised to take legal action against her parents, but she rejects the idea, knowing they would help if they could. Feeling desperate about her financial situation, Laura confides in her boyfriend, Mano, who suggests finding a second job to cover their living expenses. Later, during a power outage, she admits to not paying the electric bill, leading her to consider adult-oriented online ads as a last resort. She responds to an ad by Joe, a 50-year-old seeking companionship, and he explains that he desires tenderness, offering massages and caresses while ensuring she can stop at any time. To prove his sincerity, Joe shares a picture of himself. Despite feeling guilty, Laura meets Joe at a hotel for their rendezvous. Joe hands her a letter outlining their plans for role-playing, and though Laura agrees, she soon finds herself unable to go through with the actions. Joe is understanding and ends the play. He tries to comfort her by learning more about her life, including her responsibilities and if she is in a relationship. Laura remains distant, wishing to keep Joe as a stranger in her life. Joe agrees, understanding that mixing business with pleasure is not a good idea. He assures Laura that he will bring her a gift for their next meeting, confident that she will like it. As their time together comes to an end, Joe advises Laura to get dressed before giving her an envelope and expressing his enjoyment of their time together. When Laura opens the envelope, her demeanor changes and she gives Joe a small smile. Once alone, she can't contain her joy and treats her friends to drinks before heading to work. Later, she responds happily to another companionship ad. At home, she looks at Mano while they're brushing their teeth and no longer feels guilty about her actions. She meets her new client, Bernie, at a restaurant, where he confides in her about his cold marriage and the lack of intimacy with his wife. Laura understands his situation and suggests that a marriage without intimacy is akin to friendship. They end dinner early, and Bernie takes her to a deserted parking lot for their transaction, which turns out to be more aggressive and violating than Laura anticipated. Feeling dejected, she hugs her boyfriend when he gets home, seeking comfort, but he misunderstands and only accuses her of eating his food before going to sleep. Laura reveals that she had to endure abuse to earn money for rent, but Mano doesn't believe her and goes to sleep, leaving her hurt and frustrated. Ultimately, she decides to end their relationship. On Christmas, Laura stays at her friend's house in exchange for helping with schoolwork. Later, she heads to a pub to continue studying, but becomes the target of unwanted attention from men who pester her for her time. Laura finds relief when a man named Benjamin comes to raid and pretends to be her boyfriend, spending the evening together in conversation before he walks her home. After a sweet goodbye, she insists she'll call him after her exams, to which he takes it lightly and leaves. During a boudoir shoot, the photographer suggests she poses more provocatively to achieve success, but Laura firmly declines, stating she's only doing it to make ends meet as she aspires to be a translator or interpreter. Despite her initial refusal, she later considers more daring services and has a conversation with a student hustler online, feeling ashamed when someone overhears her. Envious of the girls at school with their luxury items, Laura decides to offer more services to increase her income. Her client proposes an arrangement for her to stay in his apartment in exchange for intimacy a few nights a month, a common practice among students. Laura struggles with the idea but still feels adamant that she's not a courtesan. Reality hits hard when she realizes she's still short on money, leading her to contact Joe again for another rendezvous, explaining her financial needs and desire for a laptop. Despite it being her birthday, Laura chooses to work normally, concealing her true feelings from her mother. Later, on the night before her birthday, she meets with Joe as he instructs her to go to the room ahead of him. Upon entering the room, Laura is met with an explicit movie playing on a laptop, which she quickly mutes. She reads Joe's letter, signaling that this will be their final encounter, and follows his instructions. Joe arrives, and Laura addresses him as Master, inviting him in. He asks her to lie on the bed and retrieve a package underneath it, which turns out to be a new laptop, making her happy. Joe unmutes the movie and asks Laura to join him, but she's disturbed by the explicit content. He disregards her discomfort, insisting on his preference and stating that today's scene will be similar. As Joe brings out more disturbing props, Laura becomes horrified and manages to break free from her restraints, running into the bathroom. Despite Joe reminding her they still have an hour left, Laura apologizes and leaves with the laptop. She pays her rent and retreats to her room, where she breaks down in tears. After some time, she gathers the courage to call someone. Benjamin arrives with flowers, and they share a warm embrace. Although they end up in bed together, Laura is unable to respond due to her emotional turmoil. She confides in Benjamin about her troubles, fearing he might be disgusted, but he reassures her that he isn't. He affirms that she's not a courtesan, echoing her own thoughts. Despite her difficult experiences, Laura continues to accept more clients. Unfortunately, another client takes advantage of her, paying far less than the agreed-upon amount. When Laura sees Benjamin, she rushes into his arms and admits that she exchanged her services for the price of 6 beers. He comforts her, advising her to demand full payment before offering any services. They make a pact to inform each other about her clients and schedule. Playfully, Laura calls him her pimp. As Laura meets with another client, she displays discomfort during their encounter. Later, while studying, Benjamin initiates an intimate moment that they both enjoy. With the improved financial situation, Laura's school performance gets better. However, Benjamin notices she's taking on more clients and spending money on unnecessary things. One day during dinner, Laura excitedly shares her potential to pursue a PhD in languages, but a persistent client interrupts, leading Benjamin to confront the person angrily. Back at home, Benjamin admits to struggling with disturbing images of what Laura might be doing at work. He becomes anxious about their outings, imagining how she earns the money they spend. Despite Benjamin's concerns, Laura continues to see Joe, her regular client. She questions him about why he pays for women's time, and he explains the concept of transactions and consent in today's society. Laura reminds him that she didn't consent to his previous actions, and he apologizes while trying to manipulate her by claiming it was for her benefit. After parting ways with Joe, Benjamin appears, and Laura is appalled, telling him never to follow her again. He justifies his actions, stating that a man should pick up his woman after work. Laura argues that the woman leaving the hotel wasn't her, it was someone else just doing her job. The couple continues to argue, with Benjamin expressing disbelief that she would continue seeing a man who hurt her. Laura justifies it, explaining the limited opportunities to earn substantial money through conversation. She offers to stop seeing Joe, but Benjamin accuses her of selling herself for luxuries. Laura clarifies that she only bought something for herself once and uses the rest of the money to pay her bills. Benjamin eventually admits his jealousy and acknowledges that it might drive them both crazy if they continue the way they are. With that decision, Benjamin ends their relationship. In a fit of anger, Laura confronts him, accusing him of being a leech and not contributing to living expenses while expecting her to work a demanding minimum wage job. The heated argument between the ex-couple escalates before Benjamin storms off. Later, Laura confronts the photographer, demanding that all her photos be destroyed. The photographer taunts her, suggesting he might reconsider if she begs, which infuriates Laura. A violent altercation ensues, and he degrades her, exposing her as a cheap courtesan known to everyone in town. Laura's reputation is shattered, and she feels immense shame. Days pass, and Joe contacts Laura, who reveals her plan to move to Paris and start anew. Joe offers her a substantial sum for a final rendezvous, implying that she'll need the money due to Paris's expenses. Though hesitant, the offer is too tempting to decline. As usual, Laura reads Joe's prepared letter at the start of their rendezvous, learning that they will be going to a nearby club. Laura is wary of being seen, but Joe assures her that the club is discreet. Then Joe makes Laura change into a negligee and put a coat on top. Inside, Joe arranges a disturbing encounter involving 2 men and a St. Andrew's cross. Feeling violated and disgusted, Laura rushes to the shower to wash off the experience. Back at the hotel, Joe tries to justify the incident, claiming he paid a fair price for her time. Laura demands her payment and finds only €100, with another envelope promising the rest on Thursday. Feeling deceived, She breaks down in tears. The next day, she arranges to continue her studies while in Paris by having her friend send her lecture notes. Later, Laura arrives at the meeting place with her bags packed, but Joe fails to show up. She calls him, leaving a threatening voicemail to expose him if he doesn't contact her by day's end. Eventually, Joe calls and apologizes, revealing that he suffered a heart attack and his accounts are blocked by his wife. He promises to give her the cash in person the next day, explaining that he is terminally ill. Laura remains skeptical and demands a check instead, but Joe refuses to leave any paper trail. He insists on meeting in person, expressing his desire to see her. Having nowhere else to stay, Laura spends the night at the home of the online hustler she previously met. Over the next few days, Laura struggles with job hunting. She receives multiple messages and calls from Joe offering money for one last meeting, causing her to erupt in anger, catching the attention of a passerby. To her surprise, the passerby turns out to be her new boss, who hires her as a wine steward and supports her pursuit of education while working. With the encouragement of her friend, Laura perseveres and takes her quarterly exams. She receives good news as she passes all her subjects. At work, her colleagues celebrate her success, and she finally finds a supportive environment and friends who are happy to see her thrive. Laura contacts Joe to inform him of her achievements, but he doesn't answer. She leaves him a voicemail while sharing her recent accomplishments. As she tours a new apartment to live in, the landlord jokes about students boldly renting expensive places despite part-time jobs. Years later, Laura is interviewed about her book. The interviewer asks if she continued offering her services in Paris, and she chooses not to respond. After the interview, Laura removes her disguise, while the interviewer reports on the extreme measures French students take to pursue their studies. Laura's book aims to shed light on this unfortunate reality. So, what do you think of this movie? Write your thoughts in the comments under the video, and also do not forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.